Hey everyone, my name is Anne and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be crocheting this cable stitch sweater. I'll be making a small in this video, but this video and the written pattern include sizes X small to 3X large. So I'll be making a small, but you can just follow along with those steps. So yeah, here are the supplies you're going to be needing. So these are all of the supplies you're going to be needing for this project. I have my large tapestry needle, my 5.5mm hook, my scissors, and over here I have the Red Heart Comfort in category 4 and Denim Fleck, but you can use any color you would like. But after I have all of my supplies, we're now going to get started on working the pattern. So let's go ahead and get started. So getting started on this pattern, we're going to begin on working the back panel. So over here I have my 5.5mm hook, and this is my category 4 yarn. I'm going to make a slip knot. And you can do this any way you would like. After you have made your slip knot, we're going to begin with a chain of 41. But since this video contains sizes X small to 3X large, the amount of chains you'll be making for each size is going to be indicated right on the side over here. But since I am making a size small, I'm going to make a chain of 41. To make a chain, you just want to yarn over and pull through. Again, just yarn over and pull through until you have a total of 41. So I have just made it back here with my chain of 41, as you can see. After you have completed your chain, we're going to begin on row 1. To begin on row 1, I'm going to skip this very first chain, and inserting my hook into the second chain, we're going to single crochet. To single crochet, just insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through 2. Doing this again, insert your hook into that next chain, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through 2. And now just continue to work these single crochets into each chain all the way across until you reach the end. So I am back here and I have just finished working all the way down my row with these single crochets. Once you have made it to the end of row 1, you just want to go ahead, chain 1, and turn your work around. That chain 1 does not count as a stitch for the rest of the pattern. So now moving on to row 2, we're going to skip this first turning chain, and inserting our hook into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet into each stitch all the way across our row. To single crochet once again, you just want to insert your hook into this first stitch and then just work these single crochets all the way down until you reach the end. So after you have worked all the way down your row with these single crochets, you can just chain 1, turn your work around. Now to continue this pattern for our back panel, you want to repeat this row, which is row 2, until you have a total of 73 rows. But once again, since this video contains sizes X small to 3X large, the amount of rows you'll be making for each size is going to be indicated right on the side over here. But since I am making a size small, I'm going to make a total of 73 rows. So I'm going to work up my back panel, and then I'm going to see you guys back for the next steps. So I have made it back here with my 73 rows for my back panel. This is what all of my work is looking like so far. So now that we have the main section to our back panel all done, the next step we're going to do is work on the first shoulder strap. So we're not going to cut and fasten off just yet. We're going to continue on to the first shoulder strap. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So now moving on to our first shoulder strap, I have already chained and turned my work around. Now beginning into this very first stitch, we're going to single crochet, except we're only going to single crochet into 15 stitches across. So you're not going to be going all the way across your row, only into 15 stitches. So I'm going to work that up and then I'll meet you guys back once I reach this point. So as you can see, I have just finished working into 15 stitches across my row. Now into the next 2 stitches, we're going to work a decrease. To work a decrease, you want to insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert your hook into that next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. From here, yarn over and pull through all 3. So you should have 16 stitches in total. Now from here, chain 1 and turn your work around. So now moving on to row 2, into this very first stitch, we're going to work another decrease. So I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, into this next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. Now from here, single crochet into each stitch across until the end of your row. And then once you have made it to the end of row 2, chain 1 and turn your work around. Now moving on to row 3, this is going to be another decrease row. Into this very first stitch, we're going to single crochet into each stitch across until we have 2 stitches at the end remaining. Into these last 2 stitches, we're going to do another decrease. So as you can see, I have just single crocheted into each stitch across, and I have these 2 stitches at the end of my row. Into these last 2 stitches, I'm going to work a decrease. Then from here, chain 1 and turn your work. So now to continue the pattern for our first shoulder strap, you want to repeat alternating row 2 and row 3, those 2 decrease rows, until you have a total of 8 rows for your shoulder strap. So basically you should be decreasing into the last stitch of one row and then decreasing into the first stitch of the next row until you have a total of 8 rows. So I'm going to finish up working my shoulder strap and then we can get started on the opposite side. But I'm going to finish that up and then I'll see you guys back soon. So I have made it back here with my 8 rows repeating row 2 and row 3. So you basically should have decreased on one side of your work while the other side stayed a nice clean straight edge. Once I reached the end, I did cut and fasten off, as you can see. So now that we have our first shoulder strap all done, we're going to move on to working the second shoulder strap. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So now moving on to the second shoulder strap, I have my yarn and my same hook. I'm going to first make a slip knot, just like this. Now from here, we're going to skip 6 stitches and insert our hook into the 7th stitch of the row. So starting into this first unworked stitch, I'm going to count 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then into this 7th stitch, I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over and pull through everything to slip stitch. So we just secured our hook in place. Now from here, chain 1 and turn your work around. So moving on to row 1, we're going to work a decrease into this very first stitch. After this first decrease, single crochet into each stitch across until you reach the end. After you've made it to the end, chain 1 and turn your work. So now moving on to row 2, into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet into each stitch across until you have 2 stitches at the end of your row. So once you have these 2 stitches at the end of your row, you probably guessed it, we're going to do another decrease. From here, chain 1 and turn your work around. Now moving on to row 3, into this very first stitch, we're going to work another decrease. From here, single crochet into each stitch across until the end of your row. Then you can just chain 1 and turn your work. So now to continue this pattern, this is the same thing that we did with our first shoulder strap. You want to repeat row 2 and row 3 with those 2 decrease rows until you have a total of 8 rows for your second shoulder strap. So I'm going to work up my 8 rows and then I'm going to see you guys back once I am all done. So I have just finished working up my 8 rows for my second shoulder strap, and of course I did cut and fasten off once I reached the end. And now that we have our first and second shoulder straps, this now completes our back bodice. So this is what it looks like. So now we're going to set our back bodice aside and then we're going to get started on the front panel. So yeah, let's move on with those steps. So now moving on to the front panel, I'm going to first make a slip knot. Now from here, make a chain of 42. So I have just finished up my chain of 42. Now moving on to row 1, we're going to skip these first 2 chains and inserting our hook into this third chain, we're going to work a double crochet. To work a double crochet, just yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Working this again, you just want to yarn over, insert your hook into that next chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through 2. So now just work double crochets into each chain across until you have reached the end. So I have just made it down my row with these double crochets, and once you reach the end, you just want to chain 1 and turn your work. So moving on to row 2, which is going to be our first row of cables. Into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet into 4 stitches. So once you have single crocheted into 4 stitches, into the next 2 stitches, we're going to work 2 front post double crochets. To work a front post double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook behind this front post, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. You want to do this into the next stitch as well. So yarn over, insert your hook behind that post, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So you should have worked 4 single crochets, 2 front post double crochets. Now into the next 2 stitches, we're going to work 2 single crochets. So this is 1 and 2. Now into the next 4 stitches, we're going to work 4 front post double crochets. So same thing that we did last time. I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook, pull through, 2 and 2. That's our first front post double crochet. Doing this 3 more times. So that's 2, 3, and then 4. Now into the next 2 stitches, work 2 single crochets. So 1, 2. And now you just want to repeat this pattern, working 2 front post double crochets, 2 single crochets, 4 front post double crochets, 2 single crochets into each stitch across until you have 6 stitches at the end remaining. But I'm just going to show you how to do this one more time. So once again, into the next 2 stitches, work 2 front post doubles. That's 1, and then here is 2. Into the next 2 stitches, single crochet, 1, and then 2. Into the next 4 stitches, work those 4 front post doubles. So this is my first, second, third, and fourth. Now into the next 2 stitches, work again 2 single crochets. So now once again, you just want to repeat this pattern until you have 6 stitches at the end of your row. So now that I have 6 stitches at the end of my row, into the next 2 stitches, I'm going to work 2 front post double crochets. Now into the last 4 stitches, work 4 single crochets to finish. So this is 1, 2, 3, and then 4. This is what row 2 is looking like. So now just chain 1 and turn your work. Moving on to row 3, this row is really easy. Beginning into this first stitch, all we're going to do is just single crochet into each stitch across until you reach the end of your row. And then you can just chain 1 and turn your work. So once you have finished working the single crochets into each stitch all the way across, chain and turn. Now moving on to row 4, into these first 4 stitches, we're going to single crochet. Now into the next 2 stitches, we're going to work front post double crochets. So everything is the same that we have been doing for the previous row. Into the next 2 stitches, work 2 single crochets. Now this is where our pattern is just going to be a little bit different. We're going to skip these first 2 front posts, And into the next 2 front posts, we're going to work 2 treble crochets. To work a treble crochet, you want to yarn over twice, skip these first 2, insert your hook into the 3rd, yarn over, pull through, then yarn over, pull through 2, and pull through 2. We're going to treble crochet into the next post as well. So yarn over twice, insert your hook, pull through 2, pull through 2, and pull through 2. Now going back into the first 2 posts that we skipped, and beginning with this first post, we're going to treble crochet once again. So yarn over twice, go back into this first skipped post, pull through 2, pull through 2, and then pull through, and then pull through 2. Doing that into the next skipped post. So you should have formed a little twist. Now into the next 2 stitches, work 2 single crochets. And now the repeat of this row is just repeating those steps until you have 6 stitches at the end. But just like last time, I'm going to work this one more time. So into the first 2 stitches, you want to work 2 front post double crochets. So that's 1, and here's 2. Into the next 2 stitches, work 2 single crochets. Now we're going to do the same twist that we did over here. We're going to skip first 2 posts, treble crochet into the 3rd, then treble crochet one more time to the next stitch. Now going back into these first 2 skip stitches, treble crochet beginning with this first one, treble crochet into that second skip stitch as well, now single crochet into the next 2 stitches, and just as I said, repeat this into each stitch across until you have 6 stitches at the end of your row. So I have now worked all the way across my row until I have 6 stitches at the end. We're going to single crochet, well, we're going to front post double crochet, into the next 2 stitches, just like this, and then single crochet into the last 4 stitches of the row. From here, you can just chain 1 and turn your work. So now the last repeat row is really easy. Into this first stitch, all we're going to do is just single crochet into each stitch across until you have reached the end of your row, chain 1 and turn your work. And so I have just finished working the single crochets all the way across for row 5. I'm just going to chain and turn my work. So now to continue the front panel, you want to repeat the last 4 rows, which is row 2, row 3, row 4, and row 5 until you have a total of 72 rows. And I'm doing 72 rows because I am making a small. But I'm going to work up my 72 rows, repeating those 4 rows with these cable stitches, and then I'm going to see you guys back to work on the next steps. So I have made it back here with my 72 rows with these cable stitching. This is what my front panel is looking like so far. And now the last steps to our front bodice is just going to be repeating our first shoulder strap steps and our second shoulder strap steps that we worked for the back bodice. And I have already showed that entire process. If you want to go back in the video, that's totally fine. But basically you want to do the same thing. It's just you want to start off by single crocheting into the 15 stitches and then decrease, and then just do those decrease rows until you have 8 rows in total. But once again, since I've already showed that on camera, I'm going to work both of my shoulder straps, and then I'm going to see you guys back once I am all done. So I have now finished working both of my shoulder straps, the same thing that we did for the back panel as well. And now I did cut and fasten off, of course, once I reached the end of both sides. And now that we have our front bodice and our back bodices all done, we're going to set these 2 pieces aside, and now we're going to get started on working the turtleneck. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So now moving on to the collar portion, I'm going to make a slip knot. After you have made your slip knot, we're going to make a chain of 36. So once you have made your chain of 36, beginning on row 1, skipping this first chain and inserting our hook into the second chain, we're just going to single crochet into each of these chains across your row until the end of your row. So now that I have finished working the single crochets all the way down my chain, as usual, I'm going to chain 1, turn my work around. So moving on to row 2, into this first stitch we're going to single crochet. Now into the next stitch, and each stitch all the way across your row until 1 stitch remains at the end, we're going to back bar single crochet. To back bar single crochet, instead of going into both of these loops as you normally would, instead we're only going to insert our hook into that back loop or back bar, pull through 2. Working this again, insert your hook only into this back bar, pull through 2, into that back bar only, pull through 2. And as I just mentioned, you just want to work these back bar single crochets until you have 1 stitch at the end of your row. So as you can see, I am back here with these back bar single crochets. Into this very last stitch, we're going to work 1 regular single crochet, chain 1 and turn your work. So now to continue the turtleneck portion of our project, you want to repeat row 2 with these back bar single crochets until you have a total of 74 rows. That is pretty simple. So I'm just going to work up my 74 rows with these back bar single crochets, and then I'm going to see you guys back for the next steps. So now this is what my turtle is looking like after I have just finished my 60 rows in total with these back bar single crochets. So now that we have our turtleneck all done, I'm just going to set this piece aside, and then we're going to get started on working the border for our armholes. So let's get started on that. So now we're going to begin working the border for our armhole, which is basically the same thing that we did for the collar, but just a little bit different. So I'm going to make my slip knot, and then from here we're going to begin with a chain of 6. After you have your chain of 6, beginning into the second chain from your hook, work single crochets into each of these 5 chains. Once you reach the end, just chain 1 and turn your work. Moving on to row 2, which is going to be our repeat row. Into this first stitch, we're going to work 1 single crochet. Now into the next 3 stitches, we're going to work 3 back bar single crochets. So once again, inserting my hook only into that back bar, then work that single crochet. Once you have worked these 3 back bar single crochets into the very last stitch, work 1 regular single crochet, chain 1 and turn your work around. So again, this is pretty much the same thing that we did for our collar. So to continue this pattern, you just want to repeat row 2 with these back bar single crochets until you have a total of 122 rows. And don't forget, since we have 2 armholes, you do have to repeat this process a second time. So I'm going to go off camera, work up my 122 rows, and then I'm going to see you guys back with my border. So I have just made it back here working my 122 rows for my arm border. And just as I said, once you did this one time, you want to go ahead and make a second border, just as I have made right over here. And now we're going to place these 2 borders aside, and then we're going to get started on working the bottom border, which is going to be the last step to our sweater. And then after we have all the elements, we're going to seam it all together. But yeah, let's just move on to working the bottom border. So now moving on with the bottom border, I'm going to first make a slip knot. From here, we're going to make a chain of 11. After you have made your chain of 11, beginning on row 1, into this second chain, we're simply going to single crochet into each chain all the way across. Once you have made it to the end of your row with these single crochets, you can just chain 1 and turn your work. Now moving on to row 2, into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet. And now we're going to back bar single crochet into each stitch across until you have 1 stitch at the end remaining. Into the very last stitch of your row, just work 1 regular single crochet, chain 1 and turn your work. So now to continue the pattern for your bottom border, you want to repeat row 2 with these back bar single crochets until you have a total of 80 rows. So I'm going to work up my 80 rows for my bottom border, and then I'm going to see you guys back for the next steps. So I have just completed the 80 rows with my bottom border, and I did cut and fasten off once I reached the end. So now that we are all done with our bottom border, we have both of our armhole borders and we have both of our bodices and our turtleneck. We're going to grab everything and we're going to move on to the very last step, which is going to be seaming everything together in the assembly process. So now we're going to get started on the assembly. I have my tapestry needle and my yarn. And what we're going to do for the sides is that beginning to this very bottom corner, I have both my front and back panels placed on top of each other. We're going to whip stitch up 4 inches on the side. And then you want to do this on the opposite side as well, beginning to the very bottom corner. You want to whip stitch up 4 inches on the side. Now just to show you how to whip stitch, I'm going to insert my tapestry needle into the very bottom corner and into both of these stitches, just like this, and pull through. Now coming back around into the next 2 stitches and pull through, into the next 2 stitches, pull through. And now again, you just want to continue whip stitching until you have 4 inches up the side, and then you can cut and fasten off. Now once you have 4 inches, you can just go ahead and cut and fasten off your side. And then again, I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side, whip stitching up 4 inches, cut and fasten off. Once you have both of the sides, the last thing you would want to do is just whip stitch together your 2 shoulder straps. So just be getting into this very top corner, whip stitch all the way across your shoulder straps until the end. Doing that on the second shoulder strap as well, beginning into the very top corner, whip stitch all the way across the shoulder strap until the end of your work. So I'm just going to work up my 2 shoulder straps and the other side really quickly, and then I'm going to see you guys back for the next steps. So I have just finished up seaming all of my bodice together. I did these 4 inches up my sides, just like this. Then I went ahead and did both of these 2 shoulder straps just like this. That's what they look like. And now the very last steps are very easy. The next steps are really easy. You just want to go ahead and grab your borders over here for the armholes. Place it right aside your bodice and then just whip stitch all the way around until the end. Of course, you want to do this with the other border on the opposite side. And then once you have both of your borders, you can just go ahead and take your turtleneck, place it right on top of the head hole and whip stitch all the way around and up the side until the end. And then the last thing you would want to go ahead and seam up is the bottom border all the way along the edge. You just want to place it all the way across here and then just whip stitch all the way around and down the side as well. And that is pretty much all there is to our project. Since I've kind of already showed you guys how to seam everything together, I'm going to do the bottom border, both of the armholes and the turtleneck, and then I'm going to see you guys back once I am all done. So I have just finished seaming all of my work together. I did my turtleneck and then I folded it in half, just as you can see like this. I also did both of the armhole borders, as you can see, and then the bottom border as well, just whip stitching all the way around until the end. Now this is basically the end of your sweater. The last thing you would need to do is just weave in all of your loose ends to finish off with a neat look. And yeah, that is the end of the tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and I'll see you guys back next time. Bye! If you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. If you bought this pattern, it would be super helpful if you left a positive review. But that's all, guys. Bye!